1982. Thank you, Mark. It's a bit of an Irish themed Friday, Good Friday. Mark will pick that up in the tail end here, but perfect track selection. Yes, you got lucky, Mark. So welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Reminder, I've been hosting in March. It is the first week of April, but I'm hosting today because Greg's out today, but he'll be hosting the rest of April. Robin reminder. So one of the things we like to know is who's in the office in case something happens in an office and we need to try and account for personnel. So if you're planning on coming to the office, please remember to put your desk in Robin. And if it's your first time in, just reach out to the office manager. They can help you through that process. But it's important that our office managers knows who's in on a given day in case there is an emergency. Obviously, we hope there isn't, but if there is, we need to be able to account for everyone. So thanks for doing that. And you can easily access Robin through an Okta tile. So, or you can reach out to the Help Workplace Slack channel, help-workplace, if you got any questions. So thanks for that. And then I'll invite Pete Stegemeyer up for a little security training incentives word. Thank you, Pete.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Stegemeyer on the security team. I just wanted to discuss really quickly some new initiatives that we're taking with security training and awareness. It's very exciting. Basically, as part of an incentive program for our quarterly training, which will be going out on Monday, this is optional training, but everybody that completes it within the 30-day window is going to be entered in to win a brand new security tumbler. They're still working on this, but everything I've seen so far for the mock-ups, they look very cool. And we are also going to be giving awards out quarterly to people. Like if you enter all of the, if you basically get 100% on the phishing tests, you're also going to be entered into that. And then whoever also reports the most real-world phishing emails will also be eligible to get one of these tumblers. They're very cool looking. I'm very excited about it. And most of this training is just going to take a couple minutes. So definitely participate, and there's some cool prizes in store. So thank you so much.
Awesome, Pete. Thank you. And thanks to the security and privacy team for keeping us safe. We are under constant attack, as are all financial entities, and we're only as strong as the weakest link. So thanks, everybody. Next up, I got Chantel with a little note about Neurodiversity Month. Thank you, Chantel.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you had an awesome week and that it just gets better as you go into the weekend. I want to start by thanking everyone who joined us last month for Women's History Month. The turnout and the feedback was awesome. Continuing our journey to creating a culture of inclusion and belonging as we continue in April, we will be focusing on neurodiversity and how knowing better can lead us to doing better. Next slide, please. Traditionally, April has been known as Autism Awareness Month, and we share a belief that autism awareness is a good start, but to be honest, it's just that, a start, which is why we're focusing more on acceptance of neurodiversity and celebrating a more modern observation name, which is World Autism Month. Next slide, please, Lloyd. Thank you. So why acceptance over awareness? Awareness is more so knowing and diagnosing, maybe even implying that there's something that we need to fix. And acceptance is focusing on understanding, connection, and supporting in the many different ways. So keeping to this theme, we have a few workshops that I'm excited to share. We'll start by Let's Get Real About Neurodiversity. It'll be our first ever live panel style discussion that will be hosted during a lunch and learn. So please join the business sustainability team and a few other folks around the company as we share our experiences, answer any of your questions, and just continue to build that connection. This will only have one occurrence though, and it will take place next Thursday, which is the 13th, from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 to 12 p.m. Pacific. Following that, we have our Know Better workshop. That's going to be an interactive style workshop that will focus on building knowledge around neurodiversity. This will have two options, Tuesday the 18th from 3 to 4 Eastern, and Friday the 21st from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. And finally, we have our Do Better workshop, which is going to, again, focus on building allyship and acceptance of folks with neurodiversity and how we can support. And that will also have two options, April 25th, which is a Tuesday from 3 to 4 Eastern, and Friday the 28th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. As the norm, we will send out optional invites to everyone for every workshop following this call. So please, please, please indicate whether you can attend or not, as it will help us facilitate and make any adjustments that we need. We appreciate each and every one of you. Look forward to another amazing month. And as always, if you have any questions, want to chat, or even suggestions, reach out to Davide or myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chantel. And thanks to the team. And now I'll turn it over to Paddy, who's got a little item on the People intranet page. And the
I do. Thank you. First of all, huge shout out to the comms team because they're always amazing at everything, but specifically Erin Washington and working on the People intranet page, which will go live today. It is beautiful, well done, easy to navigate, and we're very excited to roll it out and help you find some more resources more easily. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paddy. Thanks to everyone that worked on that. And last but not least, Mark Byrne has a great presentation on the Good Friday Agreement. So I welcome Mark to the stage. I'll let you take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Bleon. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Byrne, product designer here on the Engagement Pod. I would like to say thank you for the opportunity today to share a topic very close to my heart. Basically, it falls in line with our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. So today I want to share a wee bit about the place I grew up in, Northern Ireland. My wee country went through a period of civil unrest and a war that lasted for 30 years. Today marks the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which was the beginning of the end of this fighting and brought peace to Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland, currently we have a population of about 1.9 million. We're famous for many things. The eighth wonder of the world, the Giant's Causeway. We built the Titanic. We built the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Both of those failed. We have the world's best golf course, Royal County Down. We're home of Westeros, where they shot a large percentage of the Game of Thrones. And should I mention Derry Girls? There's also many famous places called Northern Ireland home. We got C.S. Lewis, Rory McIlroy, Van Morrison, the Dean Cole, Rona Gallagher, and Liam Neeson, to name but a few. But unfortunately, the one thing that Northern Ireland is most famous for is a period known as the Troubles. So before we dive into the Troubles and discuss what led to the Good Friday Agreement, we have to go back in time to explore centuries old conflict during a time when Ireland was under British rule. Beginning around the 17th century, two groups emerged in Ireland, the Nationalists and the Unionists, both with differing political and religious views. The Nationalist Republicans are primarily Catholic, with their roots and ancestry tied to Ireland. They want an independent Ireland. The Unionists are primarily Protestant, and they descend from Scottish immigrants. They identify largely as British and Unionist, meaning they want to remain linked to the United Kingdom. So this all came to a head in World War I. The English were sleeping because they were at war in Europe, and what is known as the Easter Rising in 1916, when the Irish Republicans fought back to try and claim their independence. They were crushed by the British Army, but only a few years later, the IRA launched a second guerrilla campaign, which led to the passing of the Government of Ireland Act. And what this did was it created the Irish Free State in the south, and then Northern Ireland in the north, which remained part of the United Kingdom. So it was basically, that was the split then, the north and the south of Ireland. By the mid-1960s, a non-violent civil rights campaign began protesting to end this discrimination against the mainly minority and nationalist Catholic minority, who at the time only had 35% of the population in Northern Ireland. They encouraged non-violent protests, aiming to force the Northern Irish government to change their ways, giving the Catholics access to decent employment, decent housing, and end the gerrymandering and fair voting rights. At the time, it was like one vote per house for the Catholic neighbourhoods and one vote per person for the Protestant places, roughly like that. At the same time, in America, Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement was gaining publicity and became a huge inspiration for these campaigners. So after a number of continued protests, it was on August 12, 1969, when the Unionist apprentice boys were allowed to march through a nationalist area of Derry. This turned into riots that lasted 3 days, and the British Army was brought in to restore order, and they never left. And the event became known as the Battle of the Bogside and is marked by many as the start of a period known as the Troubles. So the fighting continued and the British Army became a firm presence on the streets of Northern Ireland. But it was on the 31st of January 1972 when the army was deployed after a march was banned again in Derry. This led to clashes between the marchers and the army, with the army opening fire on unarmed marchers with live rounds, killing 14 people. The retaliation among the citizens was huge, and over the course of the 60s and 70s, paramilitary groups saw their membership numbers increase dramatically as the war settled into a long-term battle. Basically turned Northern Ireland into a war zone for the next 2 decades. So we have to talk about the paramilitaries on each side. There were 2 groups mainly. We had the IRA, but it actually became the PIRA, which was the Provisional Irish Republican Army, because the IRA themselves didn't want to fight against Irish people, even if they were Protestant. So we had the PIRA, they were a splinter group, as I said, and then the Ulster Volunteer Force, who were after people fighting for the Unionist Protestants. So the 70s and 80s continued with a mix of assassinations, bombings, and other acts of terrorism carried out by both sides. Shootings of civilians, bomb bars, clubs happened daily, not only in Northern Ireland, but it stretched down to Dublin and parts of England as well. These bomb attacks from both sides often killed 5 or more people and maimed and injured many more. As the violent attacks and bombs increased, the frequency, the British Army started to get more and more involved, building these big bases, police stations, checkpoints. And it was around this time when they started to build these peace walls. These walls are etched into our landscape of our big cities, and most of them are still erect today. All in all, the Troubles would go on to kill 3,720 people and leave nearly 50,000 people injured. All this back then in a population of only 1.5 million people. That's not even the Bay Area. So throughout the 30 years, there'd been many attempts to bring peace to Northern Ireland. There were multiple ceasefires, but these were short-lived, as both sides failed to come to terms on any agreement. They just wouldn't talk to each other. And without the paramilitaries holding a ceasefire, the political wing parties were not allowed access to talk. But by the early 1990s, negotiations had begun between the British and Irish governments. The Downing Street Declaration was signed by the British Prime Minister Tony Blair and the Taoiseach Albert Reynolds. This set out key principles, including that if a unification of Ireland would happen, it had to have a majority vote of the people from both the north and south of the border. By February 1995, the talks focused on the establishment of a form of self-government for Northern Ireland, pulling it away from Westminster in England, and then the formation of these Northern Irish kind of cross-border bodies. It was determined then that these results of these talks would be put to referendums for the people of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and this would eventually become the Good Friday Agreement. Yeah. So up until now, the United States hadn't really done too much, hadn't really been involved. But when President Clinton took office, he appointed US Senator George Mitchell, a special envoy for Northern Ireland, to serve as a mediator for the peace talks. With their work and by implementing the Mitchell principles as a set of commitments that the political parties had to adhere to, it gave potential for this political normality and open talks between the political parties for the very first time. It has to be said that President Clinton's interest in Northern Ireland is recognised globally as being crucial to our peace process, and actually don't think it would have happened without him. He even came and turned on our Christmas tree lights in Belfast City Hall in 1995. Now imagine this, the American president, leader of the world's superpower, to care about us wee souls in Northern Ireland. It was huge. It meant loads to us living there. Even my wee 12-year-old self realised enormity at the time. So the Good Friday Agreement was signed on the 10th of April, 1998, 25 years ago today. It was a culmination of talks chaired by Senator George Mitchell between the Unionist parties, which were the political wings of the UVF, Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA, and the British government. The agreement created a plan for a power-sharing Northern Ireland Assembly and outlined plans for future relationships between Ireland and Britain. The Good Friday Agreement is viewed as marking the end of the Troubles, and it is. So what happened? Well, the People's Referendum, as was mentioned, was held in on the 22nd of May, 1998. The people of Northern Ireland were asked whether they would support this multi-party agreement between the two sides, and the people in the Republic of Ireland were asked would they allow the state to sign this agreement. There was huge approval in both jurisdictions, with 71% agreement in the north and 94% in the south. And with the 5 main points the agreement reached were that the future constitutional status was in the hands of its citizens. And what this meant was the future of Northern Ireland was still up in the air. And if they wanted to become a united Ireland in the future, they could do so by voting. But for now, the current constitutional position remained within the UK. So Northern Ireland still part of the UK, answers to Westminster. But that meant then that the Republic of Ireland had to drop their territorial claim, which they kept since 1921. So from that then, citizens had the choice. They could be Irish, they could be British, or they could be both. Hence, I've got 2 passports. So international recognition and support for the peace of Northern Ireland came on October 16th, 1998, when the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded jointly to John Hume and David Trimble, the leaders of the largest Catholic and Protestant political parties in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement gave hope. It was a new beginning. And that's why this Easter connection is so symbolic. The rebirth of Christ rising from the dead, and it's no doubt the most symbolic point in our history. So since then, what has been going on? Well, it's not all fairy tales. Fighting still happens on each side, especially during the 12th of July celebrations, when we build these ridiculous bonfires and we have marches and we have fights with the police. But they are talking in the government. The two sides of the population won't vote for the middle road. So, you know, there's the two extremes, and that's why our government is quite often still empty. But we're working on it. We know we don't want to go back to where we are. Thousands of people have gone uninjured and killed because of this Good Friday Agreement, and we all agree there's no going back to the Troubles. We're currently in a period of peace, and long may it last. I feel the new young generation of Northern Irish citizens are coming through who were born outside of the Troubles, and all they hear are these gruesome stories of bombs and killings, assassinations, that they have no urge to want to return to those times. I have hope that peace will last, and we'll get our act together and form a successful government, and our legacy will stand testament as an inspiration to other areas in conflict around the world. So yeah, it was a rough time. I suppose just to reflect on what it was like for me growing up there, I was what was known as a Dolly mixture, which was named after this kind of multicolored, multi-shaped sweetie brand, and that's because my mum was a Protestant, my dad was a Catholic. They got married in 1976, which was unheard of back then, and probably not the safest decision they ever made. But they got wise and dragged my sister and I out of Belfast in 1987 to the countryside, a wee small town about 10 miles south. But we'd be in Belfast every week. My granny still lived there in the house my dad grew up in. But for like a Saturday morning, I'd play rugby in the morning. We drive to my granny's house down Springfield Road, and big peace wall just there. And there'd be rocks and there'd be bricks coming over the wall. My dad would put my head down and he'd floor the car. We'd be doing like 70 miles an hour through the city just to try and get away from that sketchy area. And then turn up at my granny's house. The top of her parade, there was a British Army base. So I'd come into her house and full British Army guy, gun, gear, just hiding behind her wall. It's like, all right, mate, what's going on? But this was all normal, you know. We drive home and there'd be police checkpoints, like 2 checkpoints. You go to the airport, you had to put another hour on your flight to go through the police checkpoints. But again, there'd be helicopters flying all over, like big military Chinooks, just flying all over the air. But this was the norm, you know. I grew up there, never knew any other reality. This was just life. These are bomb scares in school, where we'd be kept in school for 2 hours because it was a suspicious device that they had to defuse. So yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. My dad mentioned a wee story just to me about, he was over in England once, business. A colleague turned around him, and Dad just mentioned he was in a mixed marriage, and your man's reply was, "Oh, I never knew your wife was black." And I think that kind of sums up how ridiculous it all is. We were white people fighting white people, Christians fighting Christians. We don't and have never had a problem with people of color. We just hate each other, and we're just racist to each other. And everyone outside just doesn't understand what that was about. And I think to an extent, we don't even know what that was about. So yeah, we're in peace now. 25 years later, I think it's we've all moved on, and I do have hope for the future. Like, just to close, I'd like to play out a little speech that was by John Hume, who got the Nobel Peace Prize. He was represented the Catholic side of the Good Friday Agreement, and is known as being the architect of the peace process. So I just want to try and listen to this. And yeah.
And let us not forget that European Union is the best example, as we have learned, in the history of the world of conflict resolution. And the philosophy that created European Union and the peace of Europe is the philosophy, if you study it, that is at the heart of our agreement. Respect for difference and for diversity. The creation of institutions which respect that diversity, but which allow all sections to work together in their common interests. Economics, spill their sweat, not their blood. And by doing that, begin the real healing process of breaking down the barriers of centuries and a new society evolves. That is the philosophy of European Union, and it's a philosophy of real peace. And might I add, that is the philosophy that we should be sending to areas of conflict in the world. We should not be sending armies. We should be sending a philosophy. And given the philosophy that we have in this building, it's a philosophy that will resolve conflict everywhere. Because at the end of the day, all conflict is about the same thing. It's about seeing difference as a threat. And what we all have to learn is what the peoples of Europe learned, and we are learning in Northern Ireland. Difference, whether it's your race or your religion or your nationality, is an accident of birth. And it's not something we should be engaged in conflict about. It's something we should respect. Thank you very much.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Mark, thank you so much. Really powerful sharing, and I think everyone's feeling it. So thank you so much for sharing the history and your own personal experience. And if we were together, we might have a hug, Mark. My auntie Jean grew up in Newton Ards, Mark. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Right, you mentioned it, yeah. That's that. It's like,
And I was lucky enough to spend some time in Cork in December. And for anyone that hasn't had a chance to go to Ireland, it really is a beautiful place and the most warm and friendly people you're ever going to meet. So thank you so much, Mark. I love having you as part of the team. Thank you so much for sharing today. Fantastic history and the philosophy that guides us going forward. That's a great speech by John Hume. Okay. Well, nothing's going to top that, so I'll turn it back to you, Mark.
I'll try and find a song now.
Yes, but thank you so much, everyone. Happy Friday.